Girl spends time in heaven, returns with chilling secrets, near-death experience. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room flickered, casting harsh shadows across the walls. Doctors and nurses swarmed like a well-rehearsed orchestra, their movements synchronized but laced with urgency. Amid the chaos, a young girl lay on the gurney, her frail body limp and her face eerily pale. Monitors beeped erratically, the sound growing fainter as the seconds ticked by. "She's coding," one of the nurses shouted, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. The doctor leaned over the girl, his hands firm as he performed chest compressions. "Charge to 200, he barked, sweat beading on his forehead. "We're not losing her." The girl, no older than 10, looked impossibly small under the tangle of wires and tubes. Her name was Lily, and just hours ago, she had been laughing with her parents in the car on the way to her piano recital. Then came the crash, a blur of screeching tires and shattering glass. Her mother and father had escaped with minor injuries, but Lily had been unresponsive when the paramedics arrived. As the medical team worked frantically, Lily's parents stood outside the room, clutching each other. Her mother, a woman usually composed and logical, sobbed uncontrollably, her shoulders shaking with each ragged breath. Her father, stoic but no less devastated, whispered a prayer under his breath, his lips trembling. "Come back to us, Lily," her mother murmured, her voice barely audible. "Please, baby, come back." Inside the room, the doctor's voice rang out again. Clear. The defibrillator paddles sent a jolt through Lily's tiny frame, but the monitor remained flat. The nurse glanced at the clock, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. "Charge again." 300, the doctor ordered, his tone steely but desperate. They tried again. And again. Each attempt seemed to push the air out of the room, suffocating everyone present. Finally, the doctor stepped back, his hands dropping to his sides. The silence that followed was deafening. "We're at the 30-minute mark," the nurse said quietly, avoiding the doctor's eyes. "Should we call it?" The doctor hesitated, glancing at Lily's lifeless form. Her chest was still, her lips tinged with a faint blue. Logic told him there was nothing more they could do. But something about her, about the unyielding hope in her parents' eyes just outside the door, made him pause. "One more round," he said firmly. "Charge to 360. The nurses exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed. The paddles pressed against her chest one final time, and her body jerked violently. A beat of silence followed. A faint blip. "Wait," the nurse said, her voice rising. "We've got something." The monitor stuttered, then steadied into a weak but unmistakable rhythm. A collective exhale rippled through the room. The doctor stepped forward, checking her pulse and pupils. Relief washed over him, though it was tempered by caution. "She's back," he said, his voice low. "But barely. We need to stabilize her." As they worked to keep her alive, Lily's body lay still, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Lily didn't remember the crash. She didn't remember the paramedics or the sirens or the frantic voices of the doctors. What she remembered was the light. A light so bright and pure it seemed to engulf her, pulling her away from the pain and fear. At first, she thought it was a dream. She was standing in a field of tall grass, the blades swaying gently in a breeze she couldn't feel. The sky above was a perfect shade of blue, and the air was filled with the faint, melodious hum of something she couldn't place. It wasn't a song, exactly, but it resonated deep within her, soothing her in a way she couldn't explain. She looked down at herself and realized she was no longer in her torn and bloody dress. Instead, she wore a simple white gown that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. She wasn't scared. If anything, she felt lighter than she ever had before, as though all her worries and fears had been stripped away. "Lily." The voice was soft but powerful, and it sent a ripple through her. She turned and saw a figure approaching. At first, it was blurry, more light than substance. But as it drew closer, it began to take shape. A man, tall and radiant, his features kind yet commanding. Who are you?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. The man smiled, though there was a sadness in his eyes. "I've been watching over you," he said simply, "and I'm here to show you what lies beyond." Lily blinked, trying to understand. "Beyond?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he extended a hand, and Lily hesitated before taking it. His touch was warm, and as soon as her fingers brushed his, the field around them dissolved, replaced by something entirely new. They were standing in a vast golden city, the likes of which Lily had never seen. Towers of light stretched into the sky, their brilliance almost blinding. The streets shimmered as though made of glass, and figures moved through the space, some walking, some floating, all of them glowing with an inner light. The air buzzed with energy, and Lily felt a deep sense of awe. "Is this heaven?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is a glimpse," the man replied. "But not all is as it seems." Before Lily could ask what he meant, the scene shifted again. The golden city faded, replaced by a darker, colder landscape. The light dimmed, and the air grew heavy. Figures still moved around her, but their glow was fainter, their faces etched with sorrow. Lily's chest tightened. "What is this place?" "These are the forgotten," the man said, his voice heavy. "Those who linger in the shadows of their choices, unable to let go of what binds them to pain." Lily shivered, her gaze darting around. The figures didn't look at her, their eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. She felt a deep sadness emanating from them, a sorrow so profound it made her want to cry. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because you must understand," the man said, his tone grave. "What lies beyond is not just light and beauty. There is more to the truth than what you have been told." Before Lily could respond, the landscape shifted once more, and she was plunged into darkness. The darkness around Lily was absolute, pressing against her like a weight. Her breathing quickened, though she wasn't sure if she even needed to breathe here. She could still feel the warmth of the man's hand, grounding her in the void, but his presence wasn't as comforting as before. There was something ominous about this place, something that sent shivers down her spine. "Where are we now?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man's voice came softly, yet it carried an unshakable authority. "This is where choices echo. Where paths are decided." "What does that mean?" Lily asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. Before he could answer, faint shapes began to form in the darkness. At first, they were indistinct, like smudges on a window. But gradually, they sharpened into figures, people. They floated in the void, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. They didn't move, didn't speak. They were simply there, their presence heavy and oppressive. Lily stepped closer to one of them, a woman with long, disheveled hair and a face etched with sorrow. The woman's lips moved soundlessly as though trying to speak, but no words came out. Her hands reached toward Lily, her fingers trembling, but they stopped just short of touching her. "Who are they?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are the ones who have not yet chosen," the man replied. "Their souls linger in this place, caught between what they cannot let go of and what they fear to face." Lily's brow furrowed. "Why can't they choose?" The man's expression grew somber. "Because choice requires courage. It requires facing the truth of one's life and the consequences of one's actions. Not everyone is ready for that." Lily felt a pang of sadness as she looked at the woman again. There was something hauntingly familiar about her face, though Lily couldn't place why. "Can they leave?" she asked. "Only when they are ready," the man said. "But some never are." Lily turned to him, a new wave of fear rising in her chest. "Why are you showing me this? Am I going to end up like them?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured for her to follow him. The figures in the void began to fade, replaced by a faint light in the distance. Reluctantly, Lily took a step forward, her legs shaky but determined. The light grew brighter as they walked, until it engulfed them completely. When the light faded, they were standing in a new place. It was a vast, open expanse, stretching endlessly in all directions. The ground beneath them was smooth and glassy, reflecting the sky above, which shimmered with vibrant colors that seemed to shift and swirl like a living painting. The air was warm and still, and the silence was profound. In the center of the expanse stood a single figure, their back to Lily and the man. They were cloaked in shadows, their form indistinct, but Lily felt a strange pull toward them. She took a hesitant step forward. "Who is that?" she asked. The man's voice was low and steady. "It is someone who has been waiting for you." Lily's heart began to race as she approached the figure. The closer she got, the clearer they became. When she was only a few steps away, the shadows melted away and Lily froze. It was her grandmother. "Grandma?" Lily whispered, her voice breaking. Her grandmother turned slowly, a warm, gentle smile spreading across her face. She looked exactly as Lily remembered, her silver hair neatly styled, her eyes bright and kind, and her hands clasped in front of her. But there was something different about her, too. She glowed faintly as though lit from within, and her presence radiated a sense of peace. "My sweet Lily," her grandmother said, her voice soft and melodic. "You've grown so much." Lily felt tears sting her eyes as she ran forward and threw her arms around her grandmother. The embrace was warm and comforting, just as she remembered. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the fear and confusion. She was simply a little girl again, safe in her grandmother's arms. "I've missed you so much," Lily said, her voice muffled against her grandmother's shoulder. "And I've been watching over you," her grandmother replied, pulling back slightly to look into Lily's eyes. "You've been so strong, my dear. Stronger than you know." Lily wiped her eyes, 1,000 questions swirling in her mind. "Where are we? What is this place? And why am I here?" Her grandmother's expression grew serious, though her eyes remained kind. "You are here because your time has not yet come," she said. "But before you return, there are things you must see. Things you must understand." "Understand what?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Her grandmother took her hand and squeezed it gently. "The world is more than what you see, Lily. And life is more precious than you realize. You have a purpose, my sweet girl, one that you will only begin to understand when you return." Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. "I don't want to go back," she said quietly. "It's peaceful here. I feel safe." "I know," her grandmother said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But your journey isn't finished. There are people who need you, Lily. People who are waiting for you." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes again. "But what if I don't know what to do? What if I can't help them?" Her grandmother cupped Lily's face in her hands, her touch warm and soothing. "You will know," she said, "because your heart is pure and your soul is strong. Trust yourself and trust the light within you." The expanse around them began to shimmer, the colors growing brighter and more vibrant. Lily felt a familiar pull, the same one she had felt in the void. It was drawing her away, back to the darkness. "I don't want to leave you," Lily said, clinging to her grandmother's hand. Her grandmother smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You will never truly leave me, my dear. I will always be with you, watching over you. And one day, we will be together again." The pull grew stronger, and Lily felt her grip on her grandmother's hand slipping. The expanse around them dissolved, and she was plunged back into the void. The warmth of her grandmother's presence lingered for a moment before fading completely, leaving Lily alone once more. The void swallowed Lily again, the warmth of her grandmother's embrace fading into the cold emptiness that stretched infinitely in all directions. She shivered, though there was no wind, no tangible cold, only the weight of the space around her pressing inward. Her mind swirled with questions and fragments of everything she had just seen. The glowing city, the shadowed souls, her grandmother's words about purpose, it all felt too big for her to grasp. Lily called out, her voice trembling. "Hello? Is anyone here?" Her words echoed faintly before disappearing into the void. She spun around, searching for the man who had guided her, but he was gone. Panic began to creep in, a sharp contrast to the peace she had felt earlier. "Please," she whispered, "I don't want to be alone." As if in response, the darkness began to shift again. Shapes emerged slowly, forming into something familiar yet distant. Lily blinked, her heart pounding as she found herself standing in her bedroom, her real bedroom, the one back home. But it wasn't the warm, comforting space she remembered. The room was dim, the colors muted, and everything seemed slightly off, like a photograph that had faded with time. Her bed was unmade, the sheets tangled and draped over the edge. Toys were scattered across the floor, and the soft glow of her bedside lamp cast eerie shadows on the walls. But what caught Lily's attention most was the figure sitting at the foot of her bed. It was her mother. "Mom?" Lily said tentatively, stepping closer. Her mother didn't respond. She was hunched over, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Lily's heart clenched at the sight. She had never seen her mother cry like this before, not even after the car accident. "Mom, it's me," Lily said, her voice growing stronger as she reached out. "I'm here." But her hand passed through her mother's shoulder, as though she were made of smoke. Lily froze, the realization dawning on her that this wasn't real. It couldn't be. This was something else entirely, something meant for her to see. Her mother's muffled sobs filled the room, and Lily listened, her chest tightening. "I'm sorry," her mother whispered through her tears. "I should have done more. I should have been stronger." "No," Lily said, her voice breaking. "You're the strongest person I know. Please don't cry." Her mother couldn't hear her. The words tumbled from her lips, heavy with guilt and anguish. "I tried to protect you, Lily. I tried to keep you safe. But I failed. I failed you." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to scream, to shake her mother, to tell her it wasn't her fault. She wanted to erase the pain she was seeing, the pain she had never realized her mother carried. As if sensing her turmoil, the room began to dissolve, the walls and furniture melting away like ink running down a page. Lily was plunged back into the void, her sobs echoing around her. The emptiness felt colder now, lonelier, and she hugged herself tightly, trying to steady her breathing. A voice broke the silence. It was soft, familiar, and laced with a warmth that cut through the cold. "You are not meant to carry this burden alone, Lily." She turned quickly to see the man from before, standing a few feet away. His radiant presence was dimmer now, his expression more somber. "Why are you showing me these things?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you making me see everyone I love in so much pain?" "Because their pain is tied to your journey," the man replied. "The choices you make, the way you live your life, will ripple outward and touch those around you. This is the weight of love, Lily. It binds us together, for better or worse." Lily swallowed hard, her tears still falling. "But I don't understand. What can I do? I'm just a kid. How am I supposed to fix this?" The man stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Fixing isn't your purpose. Understanding is. You have been given a gift, Lily, a glimpse beyond the veil. But what you do with that knowledge is what matters." Before Lily could respond, the void shifted once more. This time, it wasn't a place or a person that emerged but a series of fragmented images, each one flashing before her eyes like a slideshow. She saw herself lying in the hospital bed, her parents sitting beside her, their faces etched with worry. She saw her mother clutching a framed photo of their family, her tears falling onto the glass. She saw her father pacing outside the hospital room, his fists clenched and his jaw tight, his grief bottled inside. The images changed, and Lily saw something different. She saw herself standing in a park, laughing as she played with a group of children. She saw her mother smiling, her face free of the shadows that had weighed her down. She saw her father kneeling beside her, his arms wrapped around her in a hug that radiated warmth. "What is this?" Lily asked, her voice shaking. "Are these memories? Dreams?" "They are possibilities," the man said. "Fragments of what could be, depending on the choices you make when you return." Lily turned to him, her chest tightening. "Return? You mean I'm going back?" The man nodded. "Your time here is not yet complete, but you are not meant to stay. Your journey is far from over." Fear coursed through Lily, mingling with confusion and sadness. "But I don't know what to do," she said. "I don't know how to make things better for them." "You will," the man said gently. "The answers will come when you listen, not just to others, but to the voice within yourself. Trust it, Lily. It will guide you." The images faded, and the void grew still once more. Lily felt the familiar pull in her chest, stronger now, as though it was urging her towards something she couldn't see. She looked at the man, desperation flashing in her eyes. "Will I see you again?" she asked. The man smiled faintly, his form beginning to dissolve into the light. "I will always be with you, Lily. Just as your grandmother will." And just as you will one day be for those you love. Before Lily could respond, the light engulfed her completely, and the void disappeared. The light faded, leaving Lily in a new setting. It was neither the void nor the otherworldly landscapes she had seen before. This time, she was standing in a place that felt uncomfortably familiar and heartbreakingly real. It was a classroom, her classroom. The desks were arranged in neat rows, the walls lined with colorful posters. The faint scent of chalk and paper hung in the air. But something was wrong. The room was empty, eerily silent. The usual hum of chatter, the scraping of chairs, the clatter of pencils, none of it was here. Lily took a hesitant step forward, her shoes making no sound against the floor. The room felt cold, lifeless, and heavy with an invisible weight. At the front of the room, her teacher's desk stood untouched, papers neatly stacked, the chair pushed in perfectly. Yet there was no sign of life. No lingering energy from her classmates, no warmth from the space that was usually filled with laughter and learning. It felt abandoned, like a memory that had been left behind. "Why am I here?" Lily whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was asking. Her voice barely echoed before fading into the stillness. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning every corner of the room. Then, at the far end, she noticed something out of place. A figure sitting in one of the desks, hunched over and motionless. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling. She stepped closer, her heartbeat quickening. "Who are you?" The figure didn't respond, didn't move. As Lily approached, she realized it was a girl, her head bowed, her hair falling in front of her face. She wore the same school uniform as Lily, but it was disheveled, as though she had been wearing it for days. Her hands rested limply on the desk, her fingers stained with ink. Lily stopped a few feet away, unsure whether to move closer. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Slowly, the girl lifted her head, and Lily gasped. She was staring at herself. The girl's face was pale, her eyes sunken and hollow, but there was no mistaking the features. They were Lily's. Her other self looked at her with a mixture of sadness and accusation, as though she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. What is this?" Lily stammered, taking a step back. "Who are you?" The other Lily tilted her head slightly, her expression unchanging. "I'm you," she said, her voice flat and distant. "Or at least, I'm the version of you that didn't make it." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Didn't make it? What do you mean?" Her counterpart leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing. "If you hadn't been pulled back, if the doctors hadn't saved you, this is what you would have left behind." The words hit Lily like a blow, and she staggered back another step. "No, that's not possible." "You don't believe me?" the other Lily interrupted, her tone sharp. "Look around. This is what your absence would have created. Do you feel it? The emptiness? The silence?" Lily turned her head, her chest tightening as she took in the desolate classroom. "This is just a dream," she whispered, trying to convince herself. "This isn't real." Her counterpart stood, her movements slow and deliberate. "It could have been real," she said. "If you hadn't been given a second chance, this is what would have happened. Not just here, but everywhere." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't understand. Why are you showing me this? What am I supposed to do with it?" The other Lily stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "You're supposed to see how much you matter. How much your presence changes the world around you. Do you think your classmates would forget you? Do you think your family would be okay without you? Look at what happens when you're not there." The room began to change. The walls darkened, the posters faded, and the desks cracked and crumbled as though they had been abandoned for decades. Lily watched in horror as the classroom she knew and loved disintegrated around her, leaving nothing but a barren, broken shell. Her counterpart gestured to the destruction. "This is the void you leave behind when you're gone, Lily. It's not just the physical spaces, it's the people. Your absence leaves a hole that nothing else can fill." Lily shook her head, her tears falling freely. "But I'm just a kid," she said. "How can I matter that much? How can I make such a difference?" Her counterpart's expression softened slightly, the sharp edges of her voice fading. "It's not about being perfect or doing everything right. It's about being there. Your smile, your laughter, your kindness. They ripple out, touching people in ways you can't even see. Lily looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling. "I don't know if I can do it," she said. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You are," her counterpart said firmly. "You've always been strong. You just need to believe it." The room began to shift again, the broken desks and walls dissolving into light. The other Lily stepped back, her form becoming hazy. "Remember this," she said. "Remember what you've seen. And when you wake up, don't waste the time you've been given." "Wait," Lily said, reaching out. "Don't go. I still have questions. Her words were cut off as the light engulfed her, and she felt herself being pulled away again. The classroom, the other Lily, and the eerie silence all vanished, leaving her in a swirling vortex of light and sound. When the pull finally stopped, Lily found herself standing in yet another unfamiliar place. It was a garden, lush and vibrant, with flowers of every color blooming in perfect harmony. The air was fragrant, and the sound of birdsong filled her ears. For a moment, she felt a sense of peace, but it was fleeting. She knew this wasn't the end of her journey. There was more to see, more to learn. As she walked through the garden, she spotted another figure in the distance. This one was different. Not a guide, not a reflection of herself, but someone new. The figure stood still, their back to her, their presence both inviting and intimidating. Lily hesitated before calling out, "Who are you?" The figure turned slowly, their face shrouded in shadows despite the bright sunlight. When they spoke, their voice was low and resonant, sending a chill down Lily's spine. "You've seen the beauty," the figure said. "Now it's time to see the cost." Before Lily could respond, the garden began to wither around her, the vibrant colors fading into gray. The flowers wilted, the air grew cold, and the once melodious birdsong turned into a haunting silence. The garden wilted before Lily's eyes, the vibrant blossoms turning brittle and crumbling into ash. The air, once fragrant and warm, became heavy and oppressive, carrying a bitter chill that made her shiver. The ground beneath her feet cracked, fissures snaking outward like fragile veins. She looked around frantically, searching for the shadowed figure she had seen moments ago, but they were gone. "Where am I now?" she whispered, her voice trembling. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. It wasn't a sound she could pinpoint, more like a vibration that resonated in her bones, setting her nerves on edge. The hum gave way to a cacophony of whispers, overlapping and incomprehensible, coming from every direction. Lily spun around, trying to locate their source, but there was no one there. The whispers grew louder, their tones shifting from curiosity to anger. Words began to emerge from the chaos, disjointed and jarring. "You left us. Why didn't you stay? You don't deserve to go back." Lily clutched her head, the voices drilling into her mind. "Stop," she cried out. "I don't understand. What do you want from me?" As if responding to her plea, the voices abruptly fell silent, leaving an eerie stillness in their wake. Lily lowered her hands slowly, her heart pounding. The quiet was worse than the noise. It was thick with tension, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Then, the ground beneath her gave way. She screamed as she fell, the world around her dissolving into shadows. The sensation was disorienting, as though she were tumbling through space with no sense of direction. Just as suddenly as the fall began, it stopped, and she landed on solid ground with a thud. Groaning, Lily pushed herself up, her limbs trembling. She was in a new place now, one that made her stomach churn. The sky above was a sickly gray, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of smoke. The ground was barren, cracked, and scorched, as if a great fire had swept through and consumed everything. In the distance, she saw structures, twisted, jagged towers that jutted out of the ground like broken bones. Figures moved among them, their forms gaunt and shadowed. Lily squinted, trying to make out their features, but they were too far away. "What is this place?" she murmured. "This is the other side," a voice said from behind her. Lily whirled around to see the shadowed figure again, standing just a few feet away. This time, they were clearer, their features sharper. It was a man, tall and imposing, with eyes that seemed to pierce through her. His expression was unreadable, neither kind nor cruel. "The other side of what?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "The other side of choice," the man replied. "You have seen the beauty, the warmth, the light. But this is what lies beyond for those who deny it. Those who turn away, who cling to the shadows instead of seeking the truth." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you must understand the weight of your decisions," the man said. "Life is fragile, Lily. It is fleeting. Every choice you make ripples outward, shaping not just your own path but the paths of those around you. This place exists because of choices, because of what is left behind when love is abandoned, when light is rejected." Lily glanced back at the figures in the distance. They moved aimlessly, their heads bowed, their movements sluggish. She could feel their despair, their loneliness, as if it were a tangible force pressing against her. "Can they leave?" she asked quietly. The man's gaze didn't waver. "Not all. Some have lost their way completely, consumed by their own pain. Others still have a chance, but they must find the strength to choose differently. That strength must come from within." Lily's chest tightened. "And me? What am I supposed to do?" The man stepped closer, his eyes boring into hers. "You have been given a gift, Lily, a glimpse into what lies beyond. But that gift comes with responsibility. When you return, you must carry this knowledge with you. You must remind others of the light, of the choices that matter." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. "But what if I fail? What if I make the wrong choices?" The man's expression softened slightly. "Failure is part of the journey. It is what you do after you fall that defines you. Will you stay in the shadows, or will you rise and seek the light again?" Before Lily could respond, the barren landscape began to shift. The sky darkened further, the jagged towers crumbling into dust. The figures in the distance turned toward her, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. They began to move, shuffling closer with slow, deliberate steps. Lily's heart raced. "What are they doing?" "They are drawn to you," the man said. "You carry the light within you, Lily. It is something they can no longer touch, but they are drawn to it nonetheless." The figures grew closer, their shapes becoming clearer. They weren't just shadowed, they were fractured, their bodies fragmented and incomplete. Their faces were twisted with anguish, their hands reaching out toward her. "Stay back," Lily cried, taking a step back. "I can't help you." The man placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch firm and steady. "Do not fear them. They cannot harm you. But you must remember this moment, for it will shape the choices you make." Lily's breathing was ragged, her chest tight with fear. The figures stopped just a few feet away, their hollow eyes locked onto her. Their presence was overwhelming, their pain suffocating. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked again, her voice breaking. "Why me?" "Because you have the strength to carry it," the man said. "And because the world needs people like you, people who can remind others of what truly matters." The figures began to fade, dissolving into the smoke that filled the air. The barren landscape crumbled, the cracks in the ground widening until there was nothing but a vast void beneath her feet. Lily felt herself being pulled upward, away from the desolation, the man's voice echoing in her ears. "Remember, Lily, the light is within you. Let it guide you." Lily felt herself being lifted, the darkness fading into a soft, golden glow that enveloped her like a warm blanket. The suffocating weight of the shadowed figures and the barren landscape melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the brilliance around her. This place felt different, calmer, purer, as though it was untouched by the heaviness she had experienced moments ago. She stood in a meadow that stretched endlessly in all directions. The grass beneath her feet shimmered as though dusted with gold, and the air was filled with a soft, melodious hum. The sky above was a tapestry of vibrant colors, shifting between hues of pink, orange, and deep blue, blending into one another like a living painting. For the first time since her journey began, Lily felt a sense of calm. She took a deep breath, letting the serene atmosphere wash over her. But even here, she couldn't shake the weight of everything she had seen, the pain, the choices, the responsibility placed upon her shoulders. "Why am I here now?" she asked aloud, her voice trembling slightly. "What am I supposed to learn this time?" "You're closer to the truth," a familiar voice said behind her. Lily turned to see the radiant man again, his form glowing faintly in the golden light. His expression was calm but serious, his eyes filled with a depth that made her chest tighten. "Closer to what truth?" she asked, frustration creeping into her voice. "You keep saying I have a purpose, that I need to understand. But understand what? Why now?" The man stepped forward, his gaze steady. "You've seen glimpses of what lies beyond. The beauty, the darkness, the consequences of choices made and unmade. But there is one more truth you must see before you can return." Lily frowned, her heart pounding. "Another truth? Haven't I seen enough?" He shook his head. "Not yet." Before Lily could protest, the meadow began to shift. The golden grass faded, replaced by a soft white mist that rose around her ankles. The vibrant sky dimmed, leaving behind a pale, diffused light. The humming sound grew louder, resonating in her chest like a heartbeat. From the mist emerged a series of figures, each one distinct yet familiar. Lily's breath caught as she recognized the first person. It was her mother. But this wasn't the tearful, broken woman she had seen earlier. This version of her mother stood tall and strong, her face serene, her eyes filled with warmth. "Mom?" Lily said, her voice trembling. Her mother didn't respond. She simply stood there, watching Lily with a gentle smile. Beside her, another figure emerged, and Lily's heart leapt. It was her father, his posture relaxed, his expression soft. More figures began to appear. Friends, neighbors, even her classmates. Each one stood silently, their presence calm and steady. "What's happening?" Lily asked, turning back to the man. "These are the lives you've touched," he said. "The people who have felt your presence, your kindness, your love." Lily's brow furrowed. "But I'm just a kid. How could I have touched so many lives?" The man gestured toward the figures. "You don't need to do grand things to make a difference, Lily. Sometimes, the smallest acts leave the deepest impressions. A kind word, a helping hand, a smile. These are the ripples that spread far beyond what you can see." Lily's gaze shifted back to the figures, her chest tightening as she took in the sight. Her mother and father stood at the forefront, their faces filled with love. Behind them were her friends from school, her teacher, the woman from the corner store who always greeted her with a smile. Each person carried a part of her, a reflection of the ways she had impacted their lives. As Lily watched, the figures began to move. One by one, they stepped forward, their expressions filled with gratitude. Her mother reached out, her hand brushing Lily's cheek. "You remind me to hope," her mother said, her voice soft and clear. "Even when things feel impossible." Her father followed, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You remind me what it means to love without limits," he said, his voice steady. Lily's friends stepped forward next, their voices overlapping. "You make me laugh when I feel sad. You help me believe in myself. You're the reason I don't feel alone." The words washed over Lily, each one filling her with a warmth she couldn't describe. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the truth behind their words. She had never thought of herself as important, as someone who could make a difference. But here, surrounded by the people she loved, she saw how deeply she mattered. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't realize." The man stepped closer, his expression gentle. "This is the final truth, Lily. Your life has meaning. Your presence matters. And when you return, you will carry this knowledge with you." The figures began to fade, their forms dissolving into the mist. Lily reached out instinctively, wanting to hold on to them a little longer. "Wait," she cried. "Don't go." Her mother's voice echoed softly, even as her figure disappeared. "We'll always be with you, Lily. Always." The mist swirled around her, and the golden light began to return. The man stepped forward, his form glowing brighter now, almost blinding. "Your time here is ending," he said. "But your journey is just beginning. Remember what you have seen, what you have learned. The world needs you, Lily." Lily felt the familiar pull again, stronger than ever. It wasn't painful, but it was insistent, tugging her back towards something she couldn't yet see. She looked at the man one last time, her heart heavy but resolute. "I'll try," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. I'll do my best. The man smiled, his radiance filling the space around them. That's all anyone can do. The pull intensified, and the light around her grew so bright that she had to close her eyes. She felt herself being lifted, carried by an invisible force, back toward the world she had left behind. Lily felt herself being thrust forward, the brightness of the golden light dissolving into something colder, heavier, and undeniably real. The weight of her body returned all at once, her limbs heavy, her chest tight, and her skin tingling as though it had been asleep for a long time. The hum of voices filled the air, faint at first, then growing sharper and more distinct. Her eyelids fluttered, struggling to open. The room around her slowly came into focus, its sterile whiteness and harsh fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the warmth she had just left. Machines beeped steadily beside her, their rhythmic tones grounding her in the present. "She's waking up," a familiar voice cried, trembling with relief. Lily turned her head slightly, her movements sluggish and disjointed. Her mother's face came into view, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she leaned over Lily, clutching her daughter's hand tightly. "Lily," her mother whispered, her voice breaking. "Oh, my baby. You're back. You're back." Her father appeared beside her, his normally stoic expression crumbling into one of sheer relief. He ran a hand over his face, his shoulders shaking as he tried to hold back tears. "You scared us, kiddo," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You really scared us." Lily's throat felt dry, and her voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Her mother let out a shaky laugh, brushing Lily's hair back from her forehead. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're with us." The warmth of their presence was overwhelming, and for a moment, Lily felt like crying too. But as she lay there, memories began to flood back. Memories of the Golden City, the shadowed souls, her grandmother, and the truths she had been shown. The weight of it all pressed down on her, mingling with the joy of being reunited with her family. She closed her eyes briefly, taking in the sounds and sensations of the hospital room. The steady beeping of the monitors, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, the soft murmurs of the nurses outside, all of it felt strange and alien after the ethereal beauty she had experienced. Yet, it was grounding in its own way, a reminder that she was truly alive. "Do you remember what happened?" her father asked gently, his hand resting on her arm. "The accident?" Lily shook her head slowly, wincing at the effort. "Not much," she admitted. "Just flashes." The lights?" Her mother exchanged a worried glance with her father, then turned back to Lily. "You were gone," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "For a moment, we thought we'd lost you." Lily's chest tightened at her words, and she looked down at her hands, resting limply on the hospital bed. She remembered the void, the pull, the feeling of being suspended between life and something greater. She remembered her grandmother's words, the shadowed figures, and the weight of the choices she had seen. "I saw something," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother leaned closer. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Saw what?" Lily hesitated, unsure how to explain. The memories felt too big, too overwhelming to put into words. How could she tell them about the city of light, the people she had touched, or the pain of those lost in the shadows? How could she explain the truths she had been shown without sounding crazy? "It's hard to explain," she said finally, her voice trembling. "But I went somewhere. I saw things." Her father frowned, concern flickering in his eyes. "Are you sure you're feeling okay? Maybe we should call the doctor?" "No," Lily said, her voice sharper than she intended. She softened her tone, glancing between them. I'm okay, really. But this wasn't a dream. It wasn't just in my head." Her mother reached out, placing a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "Take your time, sweetheart," she said gently. "We're here. We'll listen." Lily took a deep breath, steadying herself. She told them everything: the Golden City, the shadowed souls, her grandmother, and the man who had guided her. She described the garden, the void, and the overwhelming sense of purpose she had felt. As she spoke, her parents listened intently, their expressions shifting between disbelief, awe, and deep emotion. When she finished, the room fell silent. Her mother wiped her eyes, her hands still clutching Lily's. Her father stared at the floor, his brow furrowed in thought. "I know it sounds crazy," Lily said softly, "but it felt so real. More real than anything I've ever known." Her mother leaned forward, cupping Lily's face in her hands. "I believe you," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know how or why, but I believe you." Her father nodded slowly, though his expression was more cautious. "It's a lot to take in," he admitted. "But after everything we've been through, I'm not going to question it. You're here with us, and that's all that matters." Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't sure what she had expected, disbelief, dismissal, but their acceptance gave her the strength to keep going. "There's more," she said, her voice trembling. "While I was there, I realized something. Our choices, they matter. More than we think. Everything we do ripples outward, touching the people around us. And we can't take that for granted." Her mother nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "You've always touched people, Lily," she said. "More than you know." Lily swallowed hard, her chest tight with emotion. "I don't want to waste the time I've been given," she said. "I want to do something that matters. I want to make the world better." Her father placed a hand over hers, his grip firm and reassuring. "You've already made the world better, kiddo," he said. "Just by being here." Lily smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time since waking up, she felt a glimmer of hope, not just for herself, but for the people she had seen, the lives she had touched. Her journey wasn't over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. The hum of the hospital faded into the background as Lily closed her eyes, her family's warmth surrounding her like a shield. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: she would never take her life, or the people she loved, for granted again. Her parents were still in the room, their chairs pulled close to her bed. Her mother had fallen asleep, her hand resting gently on Lily's, while her father sat quietly, scrolling through his phone but stealing frequent glances at her, as if he needed constant reassurance that she was still there. Lily smiled faintly, her heart swelling with gratitude. For all their worry, all their flaws, her parents' love had never wavered. And now, she had been given the chance to appreciate it fully. "Morning, sweetheart," her father said softly, noticing her stirring. He set his phone down and leaned forward, his expression a mixture of relief and affection. "How are you feeling?" Lily thought for a moment before answering. "Better," she said truthfully. "Tired but better." Her mother stirred at the sound of their voices, blinking groggily before sitting up straight. "Lily," she said, her voice thick with sleep but laced with concern. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm okay, Mom," Lily reassured her, squeezing her hand. "Really?" Her mother smiled, though her eyes brimmed with fresh tears. "You're stronger than I ever realized," she said quietly. The door to the room opened, and a nurse stepped in, carrying a clipboard. "Good morning, Lily," she said with a warm smile. "You're looking a lot better today. How are you feeling?" "Good," Lily replied, her voice stronger now. "When can I go home?" The nurse chuckled. "Eager to get out of here, huh? The doctor will be by soon to check on you, but I think you're on the right track. Just a little more rest and you'll be free." Lily nodded, her heart lifting at the thought of returning to the comfort of home. But as the nurse left, a thought struck her, and the weight of her experiences settled over her again. "Mom, Dad," she said, her tone turning serious. "I don't want to forget this. Any of it?" Her mother tilted her head, concern flickering across her face. "Forget what, sweetheart?" "What I saw. What I learned," Lily said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "I don't want to go back to being the same person I was before. I want to be better." Her father leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "You've always been a good kid, Lily," he said gently. "You don't have to prove anything to us." "It's not about proving anything," Lily replied. "It's about doing what's right. I've seen how much we matter to each other, how much even the little things can change someone's life. I want to make sure I do that, every day." Her mother smiled through her tears, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You've already changed our lives, Lily," she said. "Just by being you." Lily's father nodded, his expression softening. "And we'll be with you every step of the way."